The Siveran sky was a deep shade of violet, lit by two suns hanging like watchful eyes above the capital city of Kireth. A human shuttle slowly descended toward the landing platform. From a distance, it looked like an outsider disturbing the peaceful rhythm of the alien world. Inside the shuttle, Raylan sat quietly. He wore a dark uniform with the Earth Alliance symbol on the shoulder. His eyes scanned the window as they approached the platform. First human to land here in 5 years, he muttered to himself. Let's hope they don't throw rocks. The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss. The air smelled different here, sharper, metallic. Raylan stepped out into the open. A group of Siverans stood waiting. They were tall, their skin slightly silver with glowing lines tracing the sides of their faces. They were known for their pride and memory, especially when it came to war. At the front stood a female officer. She had short silver-blue hair, sharp eyes, and a sword on her back that looked more ceremonial than practical. Her name was Kelra, commander of the defense grid. She looked at Raylan as if she was staring at a storm coming toward her city. You must be Raylan, she said without a smile. Raylan nodded and gave a short bow. Technical specialist, sent by Earth Command. I'm here to help repair your shield system. Kelra stepped forward. Without warning, she raised her hand and struck him across the face. The sound echoed across the platform. Even the guards behind her shifted in surprise. Raylan didn't move for a second. The slap wasn't hard enough to injure him, but it was filled with years of emotion, anger, loss, maybe even fear. Slowly, he turned his head back toward her, a red mark forming on his cheek. That's for being human, she said coldly. There was a pause. The guards looked unsure. Raylan blinked once, then gave a slow, calm smile. Then you'll love my next trick. Without another word, he walked past her, heading toward the damaged shield control tower. The tower was old, built before the war between humans and Siverans. Raylan looked around at the exposed circuits, the cracked panels, and the flickering lights. No wonder it's failing, he whispered. A junior Siveran technician followed him in. Should I call for security? She asked nervously. Commander Kelra might not approve of your access yet. Raylan crouched near the control panel and shook his head. She already gave her opinion, he said, tapping the side of his sore face. Now let's see what's really going wrong here. He pulled out a small tool from his belt. Unlike Siveran tech, which looked elegant and glowing, human tools were simple, heavy, and a little rough, but they got the job done. As he worked, more Siveran engineers arrived. They stood at a distance, watching him like a strange animal. Some whispered, some glared, but none stepped forward. Raylan stayed focused. He talked to himself as he worked, pointing out broken fuses, outdated connections, and weak energy flow. He spoke in simple terms, not just for himself, but so they could understand him too. After 2 hours, a small part of the shield hummed back to life. One of the energy pulses turned stable and bright. First trick complete, he muttered with a grin. From the upper level, Kelra watched through the glass. She didn't say anything, but her eyes stayed fixed on Raylan. Later that evening, the sun was starting to set, casting a reddish light over the city. Raylan stood alone outside the tower, wiping his hands with a cloth. His cheek still burned from the slap, but he smiled to himself. He hadn't come to fight. He hadn't come to argue. He came to fix something and maybe, just maybe, prove something too. Kelra finally approached him again. She didn't look angry now, just thoughtful. You act like nothing happened, she said. Even after I struck you. Raylan turned his head slowly. I've been hit harder and by worse reasons. She looked at him confused. I know why you did it, he continued. To you, I represent every mistake humans ever made, but I'm not here to defend the past. I'm here to help fix the future. Kelra didn't respond. She stared at the horizon, arms crossed. Tomorrow, Raylan added, I'm going to reroute your central energy lines to stabilize the outer towers. It'll be risky, but I have something special planned. She raised an eyebrow. Another trick? Raylan smirked. You'll see. As she walked away, she glanced back at him, once more, just for a second, not with hate, but with something else: uncertainty. The morning sun on Siverus was softer than the day before. A gentle wind passed through the metal towers and glass domes of Kirith City. Inside the shield control tower, Raylan was already working. He had not slept much, but his mind was sharp. Wires were spread across the floor. Blue sparks blinked from old panels as he moved quickly, speaking to himself. If I can merge the pulse lines from Sector 3 and 5, the outer towers might hold longer under pressure, he said, adjusting a tool in his hand. Several Siveran engineers stood near the wall. They whispered among themselves in their own language. Though Raylan couldn't understand their words, he could feel the doubt in their eyes. Kaelra entered the room, her boots clicking on the floor. Everyone stood straighter as she passed. She walked directly toward Raylan, arms behind her back. "You've made changes to the core relay?" she asked firmly. Raylan didn't look up. "Yes. I stabilized one of the outer towers yesterday. Now I'm improving the energy transfer system so it doesn't overload again." Kaelra narrowed her eyes. "Without approval?" Raylan finally looked at her. "With all respect, if we wait for approval at every step, the whole grid will crash, and if that happens, your city will be left wide open." The room went quiet. Kaelra's eyes held his for a few seconds longer than needed. Then she turned to her team. "Let him continue, but monitor every move." Raylan raised an eyebrow. "Not the worst thing someone said to me today." As the day moved on, the temperature began to rise. A heat wave from the southern lands reached Kirith, causing several old shield towers to flicker. Raylan moved through the tower levels, checking voltage outputs and circuit pathways. He didn't care about the sweat on his forehead or the pain in his back. He only cared about results. Kaelra followed at a distance, watching him closely. She didn't trust him, not yet. But something about the way he worked made her curious. He didn't complain. He didn't boast. He just kept fixing things. At one point, he reached a high-maintenance platform. The ladder was shaky, and the wind from a nearby vent made it even worse. "I can climb," he muttered, placing his tools into a side pouch. Kaelra stepped closer. "You'll fall." Raylan gave her a half smile. "Is that a warning or a wish?" She didn't answer. He climbed anyway. From the top, he carefully opened an old power box. Inside, the energy converter was cracked. It needed to be replaced. He pulled out a small device from his jacket, a human-made energy cell. It was compact and powerful, designed for emergency repairs in deep space. He connected it carefully. Suddenly, one of the nearby towers lit up, brighter and steadier than before. Down below, Kaelra's eyes widened. The other engineers began talking excitedly. One of them whispered, "That shouldn't be possible." Raylan climbed back down, tired but smiling. "That," he said, "was the trick I mentioned." Kaelra crossed her arms. "Where did you get that device?" "Built it myself," Raylan replied. "Back on a ship where nothing ever worked right. I got tired of waiting for help, so I made my own." She studied him again. "You're different from the others I've met." Raylan looked at her seriously now. "I'm not here to prove humans are better. I'm just trying to stop things from getting worse." Later that night, Raylan was alone in the control room. The lights were dim and only the hum of machines filled the air. He opened a small notebook and began drawing a diagram. His hand trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. Kaelra quietly entered. She didn't speak at first. She simply stood near the door watching. "You still don't trust me, do you?" Raylan asked without turning. "I trust what I see," she replied. He turned and faced her. "Then I hope you've been watching closely." She took a few steps forward. "You work hard, I'll admit that, and your ideas, they're effective, but you hide something." Raylan leaned back in his chair. "I hide the same thing every human hides when we travel to another world." "What is that?" she asked. "A hope that maybe this time we won't be blamed for everything," he said softly. "That maybe someone will see who we are now, not who we used to be." There was silence between them. Kaelra finally spoke. My family lost people in the war. I lost my father. Raylan nodded. I lost my brother, not in battle. He died fixing a broken supply ship near a Sivaran minefield. She blinked, surprised. Why would he go near it? Because he thought helping was more important than history, Raylan said. He never made it back. Kaelra looked away. Raylan stood up and walked to the window. Tomorrow, I'll test the final patch for the central relay. If it works, your whole shield system will stabilize. And if it doesn't? She asked. He turned with a calm smile. Then I'll come up with another trick. She didn't smile back, but she didn't frown either. Instead, she nodded slightly and left without another word. As the door closed, behind her, Raylan looked up at the stars outside. Let's hope this time history doesn't repeat itself. The next morning began with silence, but it was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that came before something dangerous. The sky above Kirith was darker than usual, covered with thick gray clouds, and beneath those clouds, every Sivaran, technician inside the shield control tower, was working in a hurry. Raylan stood near the central control hub, examining the flickering core diagram on the main screen. He had barely slept and his eyes were tired, but his hands moved fast. He could feel something was wrong, something big. Kaelra entered with a data pad in her hand. Her steps were fast. Her voice was sharp. An energy surge is building near the outer moon. If it strikes the atmosphere, it could break the entire shield system. Raylan looked up. What caused the surge? A magnetic storm. Natural, but stronger than anything we've seen in years, Kaelra said. Our outer towers aren't strong enough to block it. Raylan rubbed his chin. How much time do we have? Less than 30 minutes. The room grew tense. Lights blinked. A loud hum started to build inside the power chamber. The tower's walls shook slightly. One of the junior engineers stepped forward. Should we evacuate? Kaelra glanced at Raylan. Raylan turned back to the screen. No, we fix it. I'll reroute the surge away from the planet using the backup link in Sector 7. Another Sivaran shouted. That's too dangerous. If the link fails, the surge will hit us directly. Raylan didn't blink. If we do nothing, it still hits. But my plan gives us a chance. Kaelra hesitated. Her mind was fighting between doubt and trust. But deep inside, she remembered something from the night before. His words, his calm, his purpose. Do it, she ordered. Raylan grabbed his toolkit and ran down the hall toward the backup relay chamber. Kaelra followed. Sparks flew from broken ceiling panels. The building shook again. They entered a narrow room where the energy relay lines connected to the shield's deep core network. The console was old and covered in dust. Raylan opened it and began rewiring quickly. Kaelra stood near the door, keeping watch. You're sweating. Raylan grinned. That's not sweat. That's confidence trying to escape. She gave a short laugh, quick and surprised, but it vanished as the lights above them flickered red. Core overload in progress, a robotic voice warned. Raylan pulled out his special human-made device, a small stabilizer module he had built long ago. It was shaped like a smooth cube and had a dull metallic surface. He placed it into the main socket and twisted it. The power lines glowed. Then the surge hit. A deep boom echoed across the sky. Everyone in the tower grabbed onto something. Outside, the moons flickered with electric clouds as the energy wave came down. Inside the tower, lights turned bright. Too bright. Raylan shouted, "It's working, but I need 10 more seconds." Sparks flew from the panels. The console began to crack. Kaelra ran forward and held a broken panel steady with her hands, helping him reach the wires underneath. "You said 10 seconds," she shouted. Raylan smiled again. 9, 8. He connected the last 2 wires. A loud sound burst from the chamber, then silence. The shield outside turned blue, clear and strong. The surge passed over the planet without breaking through. Inside, the tower slowly returned to normal. The red lights dimmed. The humming noise faded. The danger was Gone. Raylan sat back on the floor, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. Kaelra looked around. The tower had survived. You really did it, she said softly. Raylan looked up at her. Told you you'd love my next trick. A few hours later, after the system was fully stable, the technicians gathered in the main hall. The air was different, now lighter, calmer. One of the senior Siveran engineers approached Raylan and bowed slightly. You saved us. I never thought I'd say this to a human. But thank you. Raylan gave a short nod. You're welcome. Kaelra stood nearby, watching. She had seen many things today. Danger, chaos, and fear. But she had also seen courage, and she had seen it from someone she once slapped. She walked over to Raylan. You could have left when the surge was coming. You didn't have to stay. I don't run from storms, Raylan replied. Kaelra looked at him with a new kind of respect. Why do you do it? Why risk your life for people who don't even want you here? Raylan paused. Because I've seen what happens when we stop trying, and I'm tired of watching worlds fall apart. She studied him for a moment longer. Then she nodded. You've earned my attention, she said. Raylan smiled. Only attention, not trust? Let's not get ahead of ourselves, she said, but her voice was softer now. That night, Raylan walked to the edge of the platform and looked up at the sky. The moons were peaceful again. The stars had returned. Kaelra joined him in silence. Your next trick, she said quietly. What will it be? Raylan looked at her, then at the stars. I haven't decided yet, but I'm sure it'll be something surprising. She smiled, just a little. The days that followed the energy surge were quieter, but not peaceful. The people of Kireth talked more about Raylan's work than ever before. His human ways of fixing the shield system surprised many, but some still held on to old fears and doubts. Kaelra was one of those who watched closely, not just Raylan but also her own thoughts and feelings. The cold anger she carried toward humans had softened, but it still lingered like a shadow. One evening, after the day's work ended, Kaelra found Raylan sitting alone near the city's great fountain. The water glowed faintly under the twin moons. He was studying a holographic map of the city's energy lines. She stood a few feet away, unsure whether to approach. Finally, she spoke. Why do you help us, Raylan? Even when I slapped you. Even when my people doubt you. Raylan looked up, surprised by her question. Then he smiled softly. Because I believe in doing the right thing, even if no one expects it. She sat down beside him. You don't hate us. No, he said quietly. I hate what happened between us. The pain, the war. But I don't hate the people. Kaelra looked away. My father died because of humans. I was told to hate you. To fight you. Raylan's eyes darkened. I'm sorry, I lost someone too, my brother. She glanced at him. How? Not in battle. He died trying to help repair a supply ship near a Siveran minefield. He believed peace was worth the risk. Kaelra's voice softened. That's why you came here. Yes, Raylan said. To fix things. Not just machines, but trust. I want to show that humans can be more than the stories of war. A long silence passed between them. The city's lights flickered gently. Kaelra's expression changed from anger to something more complicated. I still don't fully trust you, she admitted, but maybe I can try. Raylan nodded. That's all I ask. Suddenly, the tower alarm blared loudly. Both stood up. Kaelra's hand went to her sword, and Raylan grabbed his toolkit. Warning appeared on the holographic map. A sudden power drop was happening at the city's energy core. Sabotage, Kaelra said grimly. Someone wants to break our shield from inside. Raylan's eyes narrowed. We need to find the source fast. They raced to the energy core control room where the central power system pulsed steadily. The technicians were already investigating, but panic was rising. Raylan scanned the readings. There's a hidden spike in the system. Someone injected a virus. Kaelra frowned. Who would do this? Raylan answered. A rebel group that wants the war to start again. They believe chaos will give them power. Kelra clenched her fists. We can't let that happen. They worked side by side, Raylan typing commands, Kelra organizing the technicians. Minutes felt like hours. Suddenly the system flashed red, another spike. Raylan quickly deployed a firewall program using human software mixed with Siveran code. The virus slowed down. Kelra shouted, Trace it, find the source. A technician shouted, It's coming from the old underground tunnels. Raylan and Kelra exchanged a look. Without waiting, they hurried to the tunnels. The underground tunnels were dark and narrow. The walls were damp and the air smelled old. They moved carefully, weapons ready. As they walked deeper, voices echoed ahead. They found a small group of masked rebels working on a control panel. One of them looked up, surprised. Stop, Kelra ordered. The rebels turned and ran. Raylan and Kelra chased them through twisting corridors. One rebel dropped a device that exploded in a flash of light. Raylan shielded Kelra and held his ground. When the smoke cleared, they continued after the others. At the end of the tunnel, they cornered the last rebel. He dropped his weapon and raised his hands. Why do you protect humans? The rebel demanded. Raylan stepped forward. Because I believe in a future where we don't fight. The rebel looked confused. You're one of them. Raylan nodded. And I'm also one of you. I want peace. Kelra held the rebel's arm. You'll face justice, but maybe one day you'll understand. Back in the tower, Raylan and Kelra watched the city lights return to normal. Kelra turned to him. You saved more than just the shield today. Raylan smiled. I'm glad you see it. She nodded slowly. Maybe you're the trick I didn't expect. The city of Kirith was quiet under the twin moons, but inside the shield control tower, tension filled the air. A warning flashed on every screen. The rebel group had activated a hidden bomb near the planet's energy core. Kelra's voice was sharp. If the bomb goes off, it will destroy the core and break the entire shield. The city will be defenseless. Raylan looked at the red countdown clock ticking down from 5 minutes. We don't have time for a full evacuation. Someone has to disarm it. Kelra's eyes locked with his. You're not thinking of going yourself. Raylan nodded. I have to. I know how these bombs work. I built many like it on Earth. No, she said firmly. It's too dangerous. Raylan smiled gently. Sometimes danger is the only way forward. The two rushed down to the core chamber, a wide room filled with humming machines and glowing energy tubes. The bomb was hidden, inside a metal box attached to the main energy conduit. Raylan knelt beside the bomb, his hands steady despite the pressure. He pulled out a small toolkit, the one he had carried since his first mission on Cyverus. Kelra stood behind him, her hand on the hilt of her sword, watching every move. Raylan studied the bomb's wiring. The timer ticked faster. Keep the door secure, he said. If the rebels try to stop me, hold them back. Kelra nodded, ready to fight if needed. Raylan began to cut wires, carefully avoiding the ones connected to the energy core. His mind raced through every scenario he had learned. One wrong move and the bomb would explode. His hands shook slightly, but his focus was sharp. Suddenly the door burst open, and 2 rebels charged in, weapons raised. Kelra sprang forward, blocking their path. She moved with skill and strength, pushing them back. Raylan didn't look away from the bomb. Faster, one rebel shouted, but Kelra's voice stopped him. Not while I stand here. The rebels retreated for a moment, giving Raylan a chance to work. Raylan connected a small device to the bomb's main control panel, a disarming override he had designed. He pressed a button, and the timer slowed. Almost there, he whispered. Kelra fought the rebels with fierce determination, buying precious seconds. Raylan's device beeped. He quickly pulled out a wire and twisted it. The timer stopped. Silence. The bomb was disarmed. Raylan stood slowly, exhausted. Kelra rushed to his side. You did it. You saved us all. He smiled weakly. I told you I had one last trick. Kaelra looked at him with respect and something more. Gratitude. You risked everything for us, she said softly. Raylan nodded. Because this world, your people, they deserve a chance. The next day, the city celebrated the shield's survival. The council praised Raylan's courage and skill. Kaelra stood beside him during the ceremony, her expression proud. Later, as the crowds faded, she took Raylan aside. I was wrong to judge you so quickly, she admitted. He smiled. I'm glad. You think so? She looked into his eyes. You're not just a human, you're a hero. Raylan shook his head. I'm just someone who believes we can be better. Under the twin sons of Sivaris, the world began to heal. Raylan and Kaelra worked together, building trust between their peoples. And though the scars of war remained, hope grew stronger. Because sometimes, the greatest trick is the courage to change.